Coming up on Arirang News. President Yoon vows to go all out to boost South Korea's exports, raising the target for this year. In particular, the government plans to double its exports of cultural content by 2027. Amid economic uncertainties, South Korea's central bank slashes the growth outlook for the country's economy and freezes its benchmark interest rate at 3.5%. But the Bank of Korea governor notes this does not mean an end to their rate hike stance. Biden denounces Putin for withdrawing from the nuclear arms treaty, calling it a big mistake. And while nearing the one-year anniversary since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine, people in both countries are sure of victory. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with the nation's strenuous efforts to boost exports. The South Korean government is gearing up to break through the economic woes by expanding the country's outbound shipments. President Yoon vows to go all out to achieve a higher export goal this year worth $685 billion. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
$685 billion is South Korean government's goal for exports in 2023. That would be an increase of $1.4 billion from last year, despite economists this year forecasting a decline. This target was announced on Thursday as President Yoon brought together government ministers and business leaders for a meeting and promised more than $1.1 billion from the government in export support.
고금리 등 복합 위기를 돌파하는 길은 오로지 수출과 스타트업 활성화라고 하는 점을 제가 누누이 강조해 왔습니다. 강력한 수출 드라이브를 걸기 위해 각 부처의 수출 전략을 면밀하게 점검하고 개별 부처를 넘어 범부처 간의 협력을 통해 수출 기업을 지원해야 됩니다.
The presidential office also announced that each ministry will have a top export and investment chief who will oversee progress and be in touch with businesses about their needs. In addition, the government has labeled 12 new focus areas for exports. They are divided into two categories. One, for the government to work diplomatically to win overseas contracts. Another, for the government to invest in fostering their global strength. Overseas contracts will include nuclear power plants, defense, construction, and green industries. As for items with export potential, they include agriculture, digital content, and healthcare. One of the sectors targeting the biggest growth is agriculture. The government, through smart farms and the popularity of K-food, wants to grow exports to $20 billion by the year 2027, which would be an increase of $8 billion compared to last year.
For this, we will provide further support for growth and exports of products such as high-value-added alternative foods, convenience foods, and cultured meat, while creating funds dedicated to food R&D, food tech, and green bio.
The presidential office also said it will work on expanding the nation's maritime freight infrastructure by at least 30% through smart ports. President Yoon also used the opportunity to remind people of his role as the nation's #1 salesman. He said all diplomatic activities will center around exports and the economy. While promising to be at the forefront, he called on others to join in. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
This year, Korean food and cultural content are likely to play bigger roles in boosting South Korea's exports as the nation tries to expand into markets in the Middle East, North America, and Europe in particular. Our political correspondent Lee Si-woo reports.
The South Korean government will work to achieve $25 billion worth of K-content exports by 2027 by expanding its overseas market. That's according to the plans of the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism presented on Thursday at a government meeting discussing export strategy led by President Yoon.
K 컨텐츠가 전 세계적인 인기를 얻으면서 수출 규모가 늘어나고 엄청난 경제적 가치를 창출하고 있습니다. 관계부처는 K 콘텐츠를 패션, 관광, 식품, IT 등과 연계해서 고부가가치화하는 데 최선을 다해 주시기 바랍니다.
The K-content export strategy is divided into three parts called the 3Es, meaning expansion, extension, and effect. In the first part of the plan, the expansion, the government will work to expand its markets, especially in the Middle East, North America, and Europe, where K-content is relatively less popular. According to a press release by the Ministry of Culture, right now over half of K-content exports are dependent on East Asian markets. In comparison, a little over 13% of exports go to North America and Europe, 10.9%. To help reach those markets, the government will host the K-Content Expo in the United States and the United Kingdom this year. It will also establish new K-Content centers in New York City, London, Frankfurt, New Delhi, and Mexico City. Also supported will be the development of customized content that takes into consideration local cultures and languages. The extension focuses on helping industries achieve greater exports. The government will support the creation of content based on webtoons and web novels such as movies, dramas, and games. Relationships with global OTT platforms will be built to help K-content reach overseas audiences. The last part of the plan, the effect, focuses on bringing a positive effect to related industries like K-fashion, beauty, IT, and construction. The plan is to enhance the brand image of the industries through K-dramas and create related tour products fans can enjoy as they visit South Korea for K-pop concerts. The government will also support the creation of content using the metaverse and AI. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
Today, South Korea's central bank announced a key rate freeze at 3.5%, pausing rate hikes that continue for more than a year. And amid economic concerns, the bank has slightly cut this year's growth forecast. Our finance correspondent Kim Hyun-seung with more.
The Bank of Korea has reined in its longest-running series of rate hikes for now. The central bank governor announced after Thursday's Monetary Policy Committee meeting that it will keep its base interest rate at 3.5%.
With so many economic uncertainties, we've decided that it would be appropriate right now to keep rates where they are and assess all the current risks.
This plateau in rates comes after 10 hikes in the last 18 months, including 7 consecutive raises before this latest decision. The non-stop rate hikes were aimed at countering inflation, driven up in part by Russia's war on Ukraine, now about to enter its second year. But now there's a new economic risk: China's reopening. With its impact on the South Korean economy yet unclear, the central bank has decided that it's time to tread lightly. There's also the slowing economy. The bank expects economic growth this year to come in at 1.6%, revised down from its original forecast of 1.7%. The central bank also shaved 1/10 of a percentage point off its previous projection for this year's inflation, from 3.6% to 3.5%.
If prices are going where we expect, then we don't see a need to raise rates and tighten further. But as we keep rates steady, we do need to look at the effects of our policies so far.
However, South Korea is not yet out of the woods when it comes to inflation. There are also concerns about the weakening of the Korean won against the US dollar, expected to be aggravated when the Federal Reserve moves forward with more rate hikes, while South Korea stays put.
Thursday's decision does not signal an end to monetary tightening. All but one committee member on Thursday agreed that another raise in 25 basis points in the future is an optimal place to stop. So there may be another rate hike coming up. Kim Hyun-seung, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., the Federal Reserve is likely to maintain its tight monetary policy as a majority of officials agreed to keep fighting to bring down inflation into the target range of 2%. Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
The U.S. Fed remains determined to bring inflation back to its target level and cool the economy. According to the minutes from their most recent meeting released Wednesday local time, most Fed officials agreed that a 0.25 percentage points rate increase was appropriate. The Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, approved the 25 basis points increase during its January 31st to February 1st meeting, raising the target range to 4.5 to 4.75%. The central bank has raised its benchmark rate over the course of 8 meetings after starting off from a near-zero policy rate last March. The minutes, however, showed that there was a small number of participants that still favored a 50 basis point increase. All of the policymakers agreed that ongoing increases would be necessary to cool inflation. The officials remain steadfast in their opinion on maintaining a restrictive policy stance until economic data shows that inflation is on a downward trend to the 2% target. That's expected to take some time, according to the minutes. More recent economic data suggests that the economy is continuing to grow. More than 500,000 jobs were added in the U.S. in January, nearly triple what economists had forecast. The unemployment rate is currently at 3.4%, the lowest level in over 50 years. Historically, in a tight labor market, employers are forced to raise wages, which pushes inflation upwards. This suggests that the Fed will keep up rate increases, but as many global central banks have raised interest rates, there are also reasons to believe that inflation might soon be under control. Meanwhile, after the meeting minutes were published, stocks slipped slightly. The S&P 500 fell 0.4%, while the Dow Jones lost 0.5%. 이수진, Arirang News.
South Korean households saw their real incomes decline in the fourth quarter of last year because while they brought in more money, inflation meant it didn't go as far. According to Statistics Korea, the average household income rose to around 4.8 million Korean won a month, at the time roughly $3,600. In won terms, that's an increase from a year earlier of a little over 4%. But with inflation last year averaging around 5%, real incomes actually dropped 1.1%. They dropped the quarter before as well. Much of the drop in real incomes has been attributed to the cost of household electricity, gas, and heating, which was up by the most on record at more than 16%. Over in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon said South Korea and the U.S. held a tabletop exercise on Wednesday to prepare for a potential nuclear strike by North Korea. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Oh Soo-young tells us more about its significance.
South Korea and the United States practiced coordinating their response to possible nuclear attacks by North Korea for the first time in 6 years. The Pentagon said the two sides conducted the Deterrence Strategy Committee's tabletop exercise, or TTX, on Wednesday. The senior-level discussion-based drill was aimed at sharpening the allies' coordination and joint planning to strategize and execute nuclear deterrence.
Coming to a mutual basis to proceed into a decision of how we're going to react to a North Korean nuclear incident. This is very important. Understanding is the foundation for a good decision. They will not get an answer from these exercises, but they will gain wisdom, which will be critical in a time of very tense situation.
The drill came at a critical time for the Allies, following North Korea's firing of an ICBM last Saturday. They also held naval missile defense drills with Japan in the EC earlier on Wednesday, simulating ballistic missile detection and interception. More joint exercises are coming up, after Seoul and Washington last year agreed to resume the large-scale combined training that they scaled down during the previous Moon administration in hopes of engaging the North. However, Pyongyang has always used the drills as a pretext for further aggression. Experts believe the North will continue its nuclear and missile testing, leveraging the growing geopolitical divide between the West and autocratic governments.
I think that North Korea is encouraged by by the collaboration between China and Russia, and also the participation to a certain extent by Iran, providing drone weapons to Russia. I think that the more that, it's the mirror image of the way we feel more secure when we have our allies cooperating with us. They will feel more secure when they think that they've got an alliance of those 4 countries and that their backs will be protected.
South Korea's military intelligence said Wednesday that the North has improved its ICBM capabilities and is believed to be planning a 7th nuclear test to miniaturize warheads. Oseong, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden calls Moscow's decision to suspend the New START nuclear treaty a big mistake. Meanwhile, with the war's 1-year anniversary approaching, people in both Ukraine and Russia say they're confident that their country will win the war. Kim Jong-sil has the latest.
A big mistake. That's what U.S. President Joe Biden said to reporters on Wednesday during his visit to Poland when asked about Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to suspend Moscow's participation in the New START nuclear treaty. On Tuesday, Putin said that it's completely and utterly the U.S.'s fault that the relationship between the two countries has degraded. The deal, signed back in 2010 by the then leaders of the two countries, was to ensure they wouldn't use nuclear warheads at each other. Experts say Putin's remarks are aimed at preventing the U.S. from providing Ukraine with more weapons. U.S. President Joe Biden told his allies that Washington's commitment to defending NATO members was sacred and covered every inch of the alliance's territory. Meanwhile, public opinion in Russia and Ukraine are polar opposites ahead of the war's 1-year anniversary. In a recent online survey conducted on 1,000 Ukrainians by the Kyiv-based research organization Rating Group, 95% said they're sure that Ukraine will win the war against Russia. A significant jump from 56% in January last year, right before the war broke out. Over in Russia, more than 80,000 people filled Moscow's Luzhniki Stadium on Wednesday local time for a concert in support of the Russian military and President Putin. One concert attendee said Putin is, quote, like a father to Russians. Although both sides are certain the war will end in their favor, experts said it's possible it may not end anytime soon, saying due to public sentiment, it won't be easy for either side to bring up the word negotiations in the near future. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
As the war in Ukraine nears 1 year, South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin on Thursday met the Ukrainian ambassador to South Korea, Dmytro Ponomarenko, and expressed the deepest respect for the bravery and sacrifices of the Ukrainian people. During the meeting at Seoul's Foreign Ministry, the Ukrainian ambassador asked for continued support from South Korea. In response, Park said Korea will actively take part in the international community's efforts to restore peace and pledge to provide additional humanitarian support. He also said he hopes the war will come to an end as soon as possible. Nearing 1 year of the war in Ukraine, tonight we hear stories from Korean Ukrainians, as known as 고려인, who have fled the conflict and sought sanctuary in the land of their forefathers. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the story.
Over the past 2 decades, Central Asians of Korean descent, known as 고려인, have been making this neighborhood in Gwangju home. Most of them are descendants of Korean independence activists who moved to the Soviet Union during the Japanese occupation of Korea. With the outbreak of war in Ukraine last year, the village has also become a sanctuary for Ukrainians of Korean descent fleeing the conflict. From March last year, Korean village in Gwangju started raising funds for flight tickets to bring them to South Korea. This accelerated when the Justice Ministry simplified the visa issuance process for Korean. According to the village, they brought 875 people in total from Ukraine by February 12th this year. In the past year, they have been building a new life in Korea, just like their ancestors did in Eurasia around 100 years ago. Eleanor, who came in April last year, thought it was a miracle to live in the village.
I work as a staff member at the Center for the Village with support from representatives Shin Jo-ya and Lee Chun-young.
As the war in Ukraine shows no sign of ending, it is important that the Korean children get an education. Children walk toward their dreams by learning Korean at the village's Youth Culture Center.
I want to be a programmer. I like to program something.
However, they need formal documents like an academic transcript from their school in Ukraine to study at school in South Korea.
I hope both the government and the education office understand the current situation, and the school accepts children without documents like this.
Data from Gwangju YMCA legal support show that most of the Korean work as day laborers. That's because they only have temporary stay visas instead of refugee or overseas Korean visas. Every Monday, dozens of Korean visit the legal support center over working conditions and withheld wages due to the lack of proper employment contracts.
Unpaid wages take the most part of legal consultations and lease agreement issues after that. But I think the biggest problem is unpaid wages.
Living in this country, Koreans still face many barriers, so they could use more practical help from private companies, civic groups, and government agencies. That would mark a historic new beginning for them at Korean Village. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News, Gwangju.
In just a couple of years, drones flying around Seoul for food deliveries could be a common sight, bringing us a step closer to the successful commercialization of urban air mobility. The 2023 Drone Show Korea kicked off today with all the latest technology. Our Lee Dae-yeon was there and files this report from Busan.
Military drones, drones that detect gas leaks, and drones used for deliveries. It's Asia's largest drone exhibition, the 2023 Drone Show Korea. Hosted by the Trade Ministry, the three-day event kicked off on Thursday in the city of Busan with the latest trends in urban air mobility, or UAM. Korean Urban Air Mobility, also dubbed KUAM, is a project that tests the vehicle's safety and traffic management functions with the aim of commercialization in 2025. The Land Ministry earlier on Tuesday announced that it will conduct an operational demonstration in August with 46 companies and consortiums. Here you can check out drones that are being tested by the government who are looking to commercialize the sector in the near future. One company that has been making a concerted effort to develop its UAM business is telecommunications giant SK Telecom. It has an MOU with the Land Ministry to take part in the government-led demonstration program. Here it showcases its mobilized robot and live-cast drone video system, which can transmit the video from the drone's camera in real time.
We provide remote control solutions in robots and drones to around 90 client companies. Further from drones, body-mounted cameras, and smartphones, we expanded the business into AI robots this year and even added gas leak detection and thermal imaging options.
The country's national carrier, Korean Air, introduces drones from its aerospace business division, such as its medium-altitude unmanned aerial vehicle, which only 4 countries around the world possess. It's equipped with a high-tech sensor that can monitor targets at higher altitudes. Korean Air has also developed drones that inspect the exteriors of its aircraft to check for any safety issues. Not just private companies, but South Korea's Defense Ministry also presents AI-based drone robot combat systems that can be utilized on land, in the air, or at sea. The Defense Acquisition Program Administration is working to boost its weapons drone business. In a roadmap released by the Land Ministry, the global UAM market is forecasted to grow to $10.9 billion in 2025, over $61 billion in 2030, before reaching up to $609 billion in 2040. The domestic market is expected to be at over $10 billion, producing more than $17 billion worth of economic effect, while creating jobs for around 160,000 people. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News, Busan.
Mild conditions will continue to prevail tomorrow. Most inland regions, including Seoul, will see warm temperatures of 8 degrees Celsius. Southern regions will be warmer with highs of over 10 degrees. Under such warm conditions, expect a greater inflow of fine dust from overseas. Tomorrow, the entire nation will see air quality standing in the bad category. And eastern regions will see snowfall starting tomorrow. Gwangju province will see the most amount of snowfall with 5 to 15 centimeters in the forecast. The coastlines of Gyeongsang-Gukdo province and regions with higher elevations will see 3 to 8 centimeters. This round of snowfall will last until Saturday. Snowfall accumulations will cause roads to become slippery, so please drive with extra caution. Expect partly cloudy to overcast skies for the morning. Seoul will be starting off at -1 degree. Highs in Seoul will get up to 8 degrees, Gwangju 11, Daegu and Gwangju will be reaching 13 degrees. For this weekend, cold mornings will make a return in Seoul. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That brings us to the end of the newscast on this Thursday night. Just one more day to go until the weekend. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest news. Good night.